It was a night like any other on Amy Winehouse's stage. The venue was packed, the audience was cheering, and the fans were ecstatic as Amy's music filled the air. Amy's unmistakable voice boomed through the speakers, and all eyes were fixed on her, as if she were the only thing that mattered in the world at that moment. The intense and dazzling stage lights created an almost magical atmosphere, where everyone felt transported to a place where only the music and the moment existed. Amidst the crowd, a young fan stood out, but not because of the enthusiasm surrounding her. She was visibly tense, her eyes roaming the room, but unable to connect with the energy around her. Something wasn't right. Her breathing was uneven, her hands trembling, and her heart racing. The young woman felt as if she was sinking into a complicated situation, where each chord Amy played seemed to echo deeper into her inner suffering. While the others were caught up in the magic of the show, she felt lost, isolated in a sea of people. She tried to hold it together, trying to mask her anguish, but the emotional pressure was overwhelming her in a way she couldn't control. Each lyric in Amy's songs seemed to carry a different weight for her at that moment. The brilliance of the stage that had once enchanted her now seemed distant, irrelevant. The young woman was in a state of crisis, struggling to maintain her composure as despair grew within her. The show, which should have been an experience of pure joy, became a scene of anguish where she couldn't find a way to escape her own feelings. It was impossible not to notice the fans' expression of suffering, but what no one knew at that moment was how far she was from simply letting herself be carried away by the energy around her. The audience was so absorbed in Amy's performance that no one seemed to notice the young woman at her most vulnerable. She tried to hold her ground, but a feeling of emotional paralysis enveloped her. Her eyes searched for a sign of help, for something to connect her to that moment, but everything seemed blurry, as if she were observing the world through a dense fog. It was in this tense and hopeless scenario that something extraordinary happened. Amy, who was at the height of her performance, noticed something that escaped the eyes of others. She noticed the young fan in the crowd, unsure of what was happening, but with a gut feeling that something wasn't right. What Amy did next wasn't just a kind gesture, it was an intervention that would change this fan's fate forever. What happened in that moment, when the show was interrupted to help someone, was something you don't see every day. And what Amy did next will deeply move you. As Amy Winehouse's music intensified, something inside the young fan seemed to completely collapse. What should have been a moment of pure joy, immersed in the music and the energy of the show, had become a silent struggle against her own inner demons. The crowd around her, completely absorbed in the performance, was oblivious to her growing anguish, but she felt the situation becoming unbearable. Each heartbeat seemed louder than the sound of the music, and the pressure in her chest increased, making her feel dizzy and fragile, as if she were about to collapse at any moment. Unable to bear the emotional overload any longer, the fan tried to pull away from the crowd. But the flow of people pushed her back and forth, and she couldn't find a way out. She was on the verge of panic, her eyes watering and her breathing becoming increasingly labored. The lights and sounds that had once enchanted her now suffocated her, making everything around her oppressive. She looked around for help, but all she found was a crowd lost in their own world, unaware of what they were facing. It was as if she were alone in that sea of people. It was in that moment of despair that she saw, for a second, Amy's figure on the stage. Even though she was the center of attention of thousands of people, Amy seemed to sense something was wrong. With an almost imperceptible gesture, Amy paused the music, interrupting the performance in a natural way, yet still charged with a unique energy. The young fan, already on the verge of losing control, noticed the change. Amy was looking directly at her. It wasn't just a casual glance. It was as if Amy's eyes were calling her out of her spiral of despair, and then something extraordinary happened. Amy, in the midst of a crowd that had barely noticed the young woman in distress, used her power, her presence, and her empathy to transform the situation. With calm authority, Amy pointed to the young fan and in a firm voice asked security to help her immediately. It was no ordinary gesture. It was an intervention that spoke louder than the music, stronger than the crowd, and more profound than any stage performance. Amy made everything around her stop. She was saying, without words, that there was something more important than the show, something that was more urgent than any song. As security approached the young fan, the situation seemed out of control. She was on the verge of an emotional breakdown, and Amy's interruption of the show made her, for the first time that night, feel seen, heard, and understood. The young fan looked at Amy, not with a look of idolatry, but with the look of someone being rescued, someone about to be pulled from the emotional abyss she found herself in. The crowd around her was unaware of what was happening, but in that moment, Amy was much more than a performer on stage. She was a savior, a comforting presence. Amidst the chaos, what happened next was more than just helping a fan. It was a gesture of pure humanity, something that transcended the world of music and entertainment and touched the souls of everyone present at that show. When the fan received the help, her eyes filled with tears, no longer of despair, but of gratitude. And in that moment, Amy Winehouse's show transformed into something much greater, something unforgettable, something that revealed the true essence of who Amy was as a person, not just as an icon. The silence that followed Amy Winehouse's interruption was palpable. The audience, until then completely absorbed in the frenetic pace of the show, began to realize something was happening. The stage lights, which had previously seemed blinding, now seemed softer. The sound of the music was replaced by a pause filled with anticipation. The young fan, who had previously been lost in the crowd, now found herself the center of attention, but not in an invasive or uncomfortable way. It was as if Amy had wordlessly reached out, asking to be rescued from that place. As security approached, Amy kept her gaze fixed on the young woman, never looking away. It wasn't just a look of concern or compassion, it was a deep look, filled with genuine empathy. Amy seemed to understand the fan's suffering without needing words. She knew that at that moment the young woman needed much more than a break from the show. She needed to feel that someone truly cared about her, someone who could see beyond what her eyes showed. The connection between them wasn't superficial. It was as if, for a brief moment, the stage and the crowd disappeared. And only those two women existed, one offering the comfort the other so desperately needed. Amy didn't wait for the situation to resolve itself. She knew the fan was vulnerable and didn't hesitate to act. As her security team approached the young woman, Amy made a point of making it clear to everyone present how much the lives of every person in the audience mattered. Even with the show underway, Amy's empathy was the driving force that stopped everything around her. She wasn't just concerned with the music or the performance. She was, in fact, more concerned with the well-being of the people there, watching and experiencing that moment. The music could wait. One person's life couldn't. The pause in the show was brief, but its impact was immense. It wasn't just the fan who was touched by Amy's actions, but also everyone around her, who began to recognize the artist's sensitivity in the face of a situation that many might simply ignore. Amy showed that the stage was not just a place of entertainment, but also a place where humanity manifests itself. And in her speech, she not only saved the fan, but also deeply touched the hearts of everyone present. That night would become much more than a musical performance. It would be a reminder of what it means to care for those around you, especially when the pain is invisible. After a brief pause, when security finally managed to approach the young fan, the tension in the air began to ease. But what truly surprised everyone was Amy Winehouse's attitude after that initial gesture. She didn't simply resume her performance as if nothing had happened. Instead, she used that moment as an opportunity to connect even more with her audience. With a soft smile and a firm voice, Amy stepped up to the microphone and without hesitation spoke directly to the crowd. "I know everyone is here to enjoy the music, but each and every one of your lives is more important than any song I can sing today. I don't want anyone here to feel alone or unsupported." These simple yet profound words echoed throughout the room, creating an atmosphere of collective reflection. Amy was teaching something far more important than any musical lesson could offer. She was showing us how a simple act of empathy can transform a moment. As the audience watched in astonishment, many were unaware that the interruption hadn't been rehearsed, wasn't part of the show. It was a spontaneous action, driven by a genuine instinct to care for others. Amy Winehouse, renowned for her talent and irreverent personality, was showing herself in that moment to be much more human than anyone imagined. After her speech, Amy made a simple gesture. She reached out to the side of the stage and waved to the young fan, who was now being led to a safer area where she could recover. The young woman, still in shock, looked at Amy with a grateful smile and tears in her eyes. Amy's intervention was not only an immediate help, but a silent message that she was willing to stop everything to do whatever was necessary for her fans. She knew the power of her music was immense, but in that moment, the power of her humanity showed itself even greater. The scene that followed was one of a quieter audience, deep in thought. The music, which had previously been the only thing uniting the people in that place, now seemed merely a backdrop to something much more important. Amy's gesture resonated with those present, as it was a clear demonstration that artists have the power to affect people's lives in ways that go beyond the stage. And what Amy did next was no simple act of charity or kindness. She had created an emotional connection with every person present, transforming the show into a profound and unforgettable experience for all. With the fan situation finally under control, Amy resumed the show, but something had changed. The atmosphere was no longer just one of entertainment, but of true communion between the artist and her audience. The music continued, but now each chord seemed to carry a greater meaning. And for the fan, what she experienced in that moment would never be forgotten. The show, which began as an escape, ended up becoming a moment of redemption, not only for her, but for everyone there to witness one of the most profound acts of empathy anyone could hope for from an icon like Amy Winehouse. The impact of Amy's gesture was immediate and profound. As security helped the fan away from the crowd, she began to regain her composure. The sense of relief was almost palpable. She had gone from a moment of absolute panic to a state of calm and comfort, and it was all thanks to Amy's intervention. When the young woman looked back toward the stage, her eyes were filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of gratitude. She felt that someone in the crowd of fans had truly noticed her pain and done something to help her. The young fan couldn't believe what had just happened. What began as a show filled with emotion and music soon turned into an event that would forever touch her life. While she recovered, she was guided to a quieter corner where she could sit and breathe more easily. Security guards, with the help of other members of Amy's team, ensured she received the utmost care. However, what impressed her most wasn't the immediate help itself, but the fact that Amy had stopped everything to care for her. For an ordinary fan, this was unimaginable. The young woman felt as if she had been seen, as if her inner struggles had been acknowledged by someone who, theoretically, had the right to simply continue with the show. Amy's attention wasn't just from one star to her fan, but from one human to another. This gesture of empathy transformed a situation of total panic into an act of rescuing a lost soul amidst the hustle and bustle of life. With each controlled breath, the fan felt stronger, more capable of facing the challenges that had brought her to this point of suffering. As the young woman sat down, relieved, she began to reflect on how much that simple yet powerful gesture from Amy Winehouse had changed her perspective. She felt she'd received more than the help she needed to overcome her moment of crisis. She had been restored emotionally. What had once seemed like a night of loneliness and despair had now become a milestone of human connection, understanding, and kindness. Even without words, Amy's action had broken down the wall of isolation and made the young woman see the beauty of life and solidarity. When she looked back at the stage, Amy was back to her performance, but now there was something more. The sparkle in the fans' eyes reflected not only gratitude for being saved, but also a sense of belonging. She felt that somehow Amy had cared about her deeply and genuinely, and with that realization, she knew she would never see that show, or any show, the same way again. After the intervention, Amy Winehouse's show didn't immediately return to its usual form. The audience, previously completely engrossed in the performance, began to sense something more was happening. The focus of the evening had shifted from a simple musical spectacle to a truly collective emotional experience. The lights returned, but in a different, softer, more introspective way. The crowd was moved, many still processing what they had just witnessed, an artist interrupting her own performance to ensure one of her fans was safe. Amy, with her magnetic presence, didn't need much more to reconnect everyone to the music. She continued her show, but now every chord, every word seemed charged with a new energy, more authentic and sensitive. The young fan, now in a corner of the space, watched with a small smile on her face, grateful for having been saved, but also for being reminded that deep down, all human beings, no matter how great or distant, have the power to connect with one another in times of need. When she resumed her performance, Amy demonstrated a rare skill. She not only sang, but also conveyed a message of humanity through her songs. Those songs, which already touched anyone's emotions deeply, now took on a deeper meaning. To the audience, each lyric seemed written for that moment, as if the music had been composed not just for listening pleasure, but also to heal, to offer solace, to give voice to those who felt lost or alone. The audience, who already admired Amy as a singer and songwriter, now saw her differently. They were witnessing not only the brilliance of a star, but also the greatness of a person who knew what it meant to care for others, even if only for a moment. And for everyone there, that Amy Winehouse concert became an even more lasting memory because she had shown that, even amidst fame and pressure, there was room for empathy and genuine care. As the show continued, but now immersed in a more reflective energy, the audience felt closer to Amy than ever. And for the rescued fan, that moment would become a lasting reminder that, in a world often marked by selfishness and indifference, Amy Winehouse was a true champion of compassion. And this simple but profoundly meaningful intervention made that night unforgettable for all who experienced it. After the break, when Amy Winehouse returned to the stage, the atmosphere had completely changed. The audience, previously immersed in a frenetic energy of pure adoration, was now calmer, more receptive, as if they had experienced something beyond the show. Amy's pause had created an emotional pause, an opportunity for everyone to reflect on the meaning of being there. And when she resumed her performance, the impact of the evening took an unexpected turn. Amy, with her unmistakable presence, now seemed more connected to what was happening around her. Every chord she played, every word she sang seemed to resonate differently. The show had become more than a performance. It had transformed into a shared experience, a collective moment in which everyone there was connected by the same sense of humanity and understanding. Amy's music, always powerful, now seemed to carry an even deeper emotional weight. It was as if, somehow, the young fan was no longer the only one affected by it. The entire audience felt the same energy of care and empathy, as if Amy had offered something more than a performance. She had provided an encounter with the soul, a deep touch to the hearts of everyone present. The singer continued her performance, but now her songs took on a new meaning. When she sang Rehab, it wasn't just a song about personal resilience, but a powerful statement about the internal struggles everyone faces. When the melody of Back to Black began to echo through the room, it was no longer just a song about lost love, but an anthem about human connection and the ability to endure life's hardships. The show became a celebration not only of Amy's talent, but of people's ability to support each other in moments of fragility. Each note seemed to touch fans' hearts in a more intense, more intimate way, as if, for a brief moment, they were experiencing not just the music, but what the music truly meant. The fan, now seated in a corner of the space, watched intently, but with a new light in her eyes. She was there, present at the show, but her heart was now in tune with Amy's art. The music had a new purpose for her. She was no longer simply listening, she was feeling, living, and best of all, she knew Amy had been a fundamental part of her transformation that night. Amy, with a simple gesture of compassion, had transformed not only the show, but the fans' life. And by continuing to sing, Amy wasn't just providing entertainment. She was healing, connecting, and showing once again that music is a universal language that goes beyond sound. What happened in the minutes following Amy's return to the stage was something rarely seen at a live show. The audience, accustomed to an entertainment experience, now found themselves in a deep emotional connection with the artist and everyone around her. It wasn't just the music that united them. It was the sense of empathy, of shared humanity that had formed in the air. Amy's intervention hadn't just rescued a fan, it had touched every person present, awakening a sense of solidarity that went beyond simply appreciating a performance. The applause that followed the show's resumption wasn't the typical applause of an ecstatic audience, but rather the applause of a deeply moved audience, grateful for a gesture of humanity amidst the glare of the lights and the glamour of a stage. Many were visibly moved, their eyes welling up, as if sharing the weight of the moment and the depth of the connection created. There was something magical about that night. Amy's music, with all its power and intensity, was now accompanied by a sense of unity, as if everyone in the room had been invited to be part of a deeper, more authentic experience. People were reflecting on the impact of what they had just witnessed. For many, Amy Winehouse's concert had become a life lesson. It was no longer a simple cultural event. It was an experience that reminded them of the importance of stopping, observing, and caring. The young fan, who had previously felt alone and lost, was no longer isolated. She was part of something bigger, something that Amy's music, with its raw and powerful sincerity, had amplified. What Amy had done for her wasn't limited to that night. The audience's collective reaction showed that Amy's actions had planted a seed of empathy in everyone there. Amy's concert had become something that transcended the stage. For the fans around her, the moment was also unforgettable. Those who witnessed Amy helping a fan in distress not only felt more connected to the singer, but also to those around her. That night, marked by Amy's surprise and compassionate gesture, would become a point of unity, a collective memory that would last long beyond the last chord of the night. The power of music, art, and humanity had intertwined in a unique and indelible way. Amy, without even trying, had transformed her show into something much greater than a musical spectacle. She had created a moment of healing, reflection, and empathy. After the show, as the lights dimmed and the crowd began to disperse, the atmosphere was still filled with the energy of what had just happened. The young fan, still shaken by the experience, was being escorted by security, and for a moment, reality seemed to have shifted for her. What initially seemed like an ordinary night with a lively and relaxed show now revealed itself to be a milestone in her life. She had been saved, not only physically but emotionally, by a simple gesture of empathy from Amy Winehouse. As she left the venue with the security and support of the staff, she felt that something inside her had changed forever. The fans around her, many still discussing what had happened, were equally impacted by Amy's interruption and the way she cared for her fan. It was as if that night had transcended the traditional concept of a live show. Those in attendance no longer saw Amy as just a pop star, but as a woman who used her position to make a difference in people's lives. She not only delivered a top-notch performance, but also taught everyone there an invaluable lesson about humanity, compassion, and genuine connection. During the night, the young fan, still recovering, had the opportunity to speak with Amy's team, who were supportive and welcoming. Amy, although the show had already ended, continued to exude an aura of warmth and acceptance. The young woman's words were simple but full of gratitude. "You saw me. You saved me when no one else noticed." Amy, with her unmistakable manner and a humility that belied her fame, did nothing more than acknowledge her fans' pain and act sincerely. For her, it wasn't about being seen as a hero, but simply doing the right thing. This connection wasn't limited to the night of the show. In the following days, social media was flooded with messages from fans who witnessed Amy's gesture. They shared their own experiences of emotional hardship and how the singer's actions had served as an example for them. Amy's impact wasn't something that faded when the lights went out on the stage. On the contrary, it reverberated deeply and lastingly. The message she conveyed was clear and powerful: the importance of caring for those around us, especially in our most vulnerable moments. Even without words, Amy did something few artists would dare. She stopped to listen and act, and it changed lives. The young fan, looking back and reflecting on that night, realized something much bigger had happened. It wasn't just an artist helping a fan. It was a universal message about the power of empathy, kindness, and humanity that resides in all of us, even in the most difficult times. And as the show ended, the true lesson had been delivered. Music, fame, and success are important, but true greatness lies in how we use our position to help others. The story of that night would not be easily forgotten. Amy Winehouse's gesture, simple yet profound, would leave a legacy far beyond the songs she sang. She had become more than a famous artist. She'd become a symbol of humanity and empathy, and her attitude at that show revealed how much she cared for her fans. The night was not only a celebration of her career, but also a testament to the fact that true greatness lies not in fame or success, but in the ability to positively impact someone's life, especially in their most vulnerable moments. Amy, always known for her authenticity and the way she expressed her emotions in her songs, also showed that behind her public image lay a person who understood the pain and struggles of her fans. The gesture of interrupting her show to help a suffering fan was, in fact, a demonstration of the transformative power of empathy, a reminder that everyone, regardless of who they are or what they do, can make a difference in someone else's life. For the fans in attendance that night, the show became more than just a musical performance. It became a memory of how an icon like Amy Winehouse, even in a moment of turmoil, could transform an ordinary night into a profound lesson about life, pain, and human connection. She wasn't just a star on stage. She was a person who felt and cared for those who accompanied her on her journey. For everyone who witnessed that act of kindness, Amy left an indelible mark. The true significance of her life and career lay not only in the songs she created, but also in the way she treated others with compassion. The young fan, who had begun the night in a state of despair, now carried with her something more precious than any souvenir from the show, a lesson in the importance of being seen, heard, and supported, especially when we are at our lowest. She would never forget that night when Amy Winehouse, with her gesture of humanity, not only saved a fan, but also transformed a night of music into a life experience. And thus, Amy Winehouse's legacy, with all its complexity and vulnerability, lived on far beyond her music. It became a story of empathy, connection, and transformation.